Picture a Tuesday morning in the fall of 1954. A woman named Dorothy Hess stands at the kitchen table in Dayton, Ohio, wearing an apron over her house dress. The children are at school. The house is quiet except for the tick of the wall clock and the scratch of a pencil moving across a small green ledger she bought at the 5 and dime store for 9 cents. She's not writing a grocery list. She's running the family's finances down to the last dime, with no bank account in her name and no legal right to a credit line. What she knew and what her granddaughters were never taught is what this video is about. Number 20. The flour tin savings account. Before women could open savings accounts on their own, there was the old empty flour tin, kept behind the vinegar on the pantry shelf. Every week, Dorothy folded $1 bill and pressed it inside, not to deceive her husband, because she had learned from her mother that a household without a private reserve was one bad winter away from ruin. By the time their youngest started high school, that tin held $412. It was her job, the part nobody paid her for. Number 19, the garden row that paid for Christmas. In the summer of 1952, Ruth Callahan in Muncie, Indiana, planted 5 extra rows of green beans. By September, she had put up 43 jars, traded some for sugar and honey, and sold the rest at the church exchange. By December, she had $22 set aside for Christmas gifts, entirely from seeds that cost 60 cents in April. The garden fed the family in summer and funded Christmas in December. Number 18, the second pot roast principle. She never made one pot roast, she made 2, and the second one nobody at the table knew about. A large chuck roast became Sunday dinner, Monday's hash, Tuesday's soup, and Wednesday's sandwiches. Women across the Midwest did this quietly, bought larger cuts on Thursday specials, stretched the yield further than their husbands realized, and pocketed the difference. If this kind of quiet intelligence speaks to someone you know, share this video with them. These stories deserve to stay alive. Number 17, the Coal Season Coat Fund. In October 1949, Agnes Birch in Scranton started setting aside 30 cents every week inside a hat box on the top bedroom shelf. By the following October, it held $15.60, enough for her daughter's winter coat at Pomeroy's, paid in cash without asking her husband for a single extra dollar. Agnes had simply decided 12 months earlier that Clara would need a coat, so she funded it herself, coin by coin, planning that begins a full year before the need arrives. Number 16, the envelope on the back of the pantry door. 6 envelopes, labeled in fountain pen: rent, light bill, doctor, school, church, repair. When the weekly money came in, she divided it before spending a single cent. Whatever remained after the envelopes were fed went to groceries. This was not a magazine system. Modern financial advisors sell it today and charge for the course. In 1952, it was just how you kept a family from drowning. Number 15, the darned sock drawer. A wooden darning mushroom sat in nearly every kitchen drawer before 1960. Men's work socks cost 35 cents a pair. A woman who darned instead of replacing saved those cents, year after year, redirecting every dollar into the reserve that kept the heat on in February. They saved everything, they repaired everything, they threw away almost nothing. Number 14, the neighbor credit exchange. She never needed to buy vanilla extract in 1953 because the woman across the alley owed her half a cup of bread flour from 2 Sundays ago. This was the informal credit system of the post-war American neighborhood. No ledger, no interest, just trust and memory. Women maintained these accounts in their heads with extraordinary precision. Nothing truly belonged to just one household. The grocery money stretched further than any man with a paycheck understood. Number 13, the root cellar reserve. Behind the Halverson house in Worthington, Minnesota, a root cellar held the family's entire winter by October. 40 pounds of potatoes, 23 jars of tomatoes, enough dried beans to fill a pillowcase. All of it grown and put up by one woman over a single summer. The family's grocery bill dropped 30% every winter, not because prices fell, but because the woman of the house had already purchased the winter in August at the price of seeds and labor. She called it getting ready. Subscribe if you want to keep hearing stories like these. They matter more than most of what gets remembered. Number 12, the children's clothing cascade. Nothing in the closet belonged permanently to one child. The coat Dorothy's eldest wore in 1951 became the middle daughter's in 1953, and the youngest's in 1955, let out, taken in, relaced at the collar, but the same coat. The shoes passed down in the same order. The wool skirts, the school sweaters you bought for the oldest and planned when you bought for the sizes to come. Number 11, the church rummage circuit. Twice a year, Loretta Marsh in Columbus made a circuit of every church rummage sale within walking distance. She was not browsing. She had a list. At the Methodist Church on 5th Street in 1955, she found a nearly new men's overcoat for 35 cents. Her husband wore it for 7 years. The coat had originally sold for $14. She called it shopping. By any measure, it was genius. Number 10, the shared subscription system, Ladies' Home Journal, Good Housekeeping, McCall's. Each cost nearly $1 a year on subscription. So she bought one and traded it with 2 neighbors when she finished reading. All 3 households read the same issue for 30 cents each. They applied this to pattern books, canning guides, church cookbooks. Nothing passable was bought twice on the same block. If you find yourself thinking of someone in your family right now, leave their name in the comments. Number 9, the hardware store negotiation. She never paid the price on the tag. She looked at the item, looked at the clerk, and said quietly, "Is that the best you can do on this one?" Then waited. In a post-war economy where store owners counted on decades of repeat business from the same families, the answer was almost always a small concession. Asking quietly produced results that silence never did. Number 8, the utility discipline. She turned off lights when she left a room, kept the oven door closed while things baked, aired the house in the morning, closed it by noon. An electric bill for a family of 5 might run $6 a month. Discipline kept hers at $4 a month. Nobody celebrated the bill that did not arrive, but she noticed. Number 7, the trading post mindset. She never threw away fabric that still had use. The dress too worn to wear became an apron. The apron became a rag. The rag eventually went to the rag collector, who came twice a year and paid by the pound. Every object moved through a cascade of purposes. The last one was almost never the garbage. It was not scarcity carried forward. It was a philosophy. Waste was not merely wasteful, but a failure of responsibility. Number 6, the annual inventory habit. Every January she audited the house, not to clean it, but to know it. What was running low? What would need replacing before it failed? What could be repaired instead? A tire wearing thin in October was not a surprise to a woman who had noted its condition in January and set aside 30 cents a week since February. By October, she had $19 in the tire envelope. The tire cost $16 and change. She called it taking stock. The intelligence behind it is timeless. Number 5. The bread that was never bought on Monday. She bought bread on Wednesday, always Wednesday. By midweek, weekend loaves at the bakery were half price. A loaf that cost 22 cents on Saturday cost 11 cents on Wednesday. She bought 2, one for the bread box, one for the freezer. He never noticed the difference. She noticed the 11 cents. Number 4. The rainy day jar with a name. In a glass jar at the back of the top bedroom shelf, there was always money. Not the tin money, not the envelope money, different money, emergency money. Vivian Daly in Youngstown kept hers funded to exactly $40 throughout the 1950s. $40 was 2 weeks of take-home pay, enough to cover a furnace repair or a dental emergency without a crisis. Whenever the jar fell below $40, she rebuilt it before she funded anything else. Christmas could wait, the drapes could wait, the $40 could not. She never told her children it existed until they were grown. When her daughter asked why, Vivian said, "Because if you know it's there, you'll spend it." Number 3, the slow simmer, savings. She cooked on low heat whenever possible, not for flavor, though the flavor improved, but because low heat used less gas. The iron ran at the lowest setting that still pressed fabric clean. The water heater ran 5 degrees cooler than the factory setting. Small calibrations, repeated across years, compounded into a household that consistently spent less than it earned, and nobody felt the difference. Number 2, the quiet line item veto. When her husband mentioned the new Buick, she did not argue. She nodded, served the pot roast, and that evening quietly subtracted what a car payment would do to the household. The next morning at breakfast, she said one sentence about the furnace needing work. The Buick went away. She never said no. She said the truth about the furnace, and the truth did the rest. This was the single most powerful financial tool a wife in the 1950s ever held. Not a bank account, not a signature. One sentence, spoken calmly at the right moment. Number 1, the practice of knowing where every dollar was. This was not a trick, it was a discipline, and it was the one that made every other entry on this list possible. A small notebook, a regular pencil, the habit of writing everything down when it happened. Groceries, $4.18. Light bill, $3. Church, 50 cents. Week after week, month after month. She knew exactly where every dollar was, not approximately, exactly. She could not open a bank account in her own name until 1974. She had no legal standing as a financial actor in the American economy, but she ran the American household economy anyway, from a kitchen table at 10 o'clock at night, after the children were asleep and the dishes were dry. She was the most underestimated economist this country ever produced. We look at the 1950s through photographs, and we see a simpler time. We see the surface. We miss the woman at the kitchen table at night, the flour tin, the hat box, the 6 labeled envelopes, the root cellar full of October's work. These women were not powerless. They were operating inside severe constraints with a kind of creative intelligence that never made the history books, because history books were not written about kitchens. The tricks they used were not tricks. They were wisdom earned through necessity, refined across generations, passed down at kitchen counters across this country. If you carry even one idea forward, one envelope, one notebook, one jar on a shelf, something real survives. And they deserve at least that much.